Well, let's pick up on that particular point with our next guest, who joins us from London. Alabama Senator Richard Shelby who was there by coincidence. Senator, I don't know if you heard the last comment by Dennis Ross, but, you know, ironically, every time al-Qaeda hits, it somehow helps our union against the terrorists in the war on terror. Have you noticed that in London today?
I have noticed the people seem to be very determined, carrying on business as usual. I've noticed the sun even came out today, and people were walking briskly. They did not seem to be scared. They know that this war against terrorists will be a long war, and they know that they and some of their families have been victimized today.
Now, these attacks were coordinated. Is our response to these attacks going to be coordinated?
I'm sure they will be. You know, the fact that they're at the G8 meeting north of here at Glen Eagles in Scotland, Tony Blair, President Bush, President Chirac, President Schroeder, you can name them all. They're there. They've already been out together to condemn this attack, and I believe this will bring people together. When we were attacked, a lot of people thought they would not be attacked, but everybody in the Western world is at risk. And we know this, and although we've crippled al-Qaeda and other al-Qaeda related groups, they're not finished by any means, and we have to remain diligent. We have to hunt them down. We have to destroy them.
Well, and in fact, this attack, of course, is a reminder that despite our efforts against them and our success against al-Qaeda, they still managed to get a coordinated cell into a major city in the Western world and carry out these attacks, so they can still operate underneath our radar.
Absolutely. That's, you know, it's no telling how many attacks that we've stopped, we've thwarted. The British, us, the French, and others since September the 11th. But when one gets through, it reminds us of how dangerous terrorists are, what they will do to us, and we should never forget that.
Now, there has been debate in this country since the Patriot Act was instituted, and you're on the Homeland Security Subcommittee, about whether or not that goes too far in limiting our liberties in the United States. Does this attack show us that perhaps the Patriot Act itself doesn't go far enough?
Well, I think we have to weigh all this. You know, all of us are very interested in our constitutional rights, and we should be. We respect the Constitution. We respect our neighbor. On the other hand, we have to weigh the rights of the police force, the FBI, the CIA, the local people that would protect us and from these people. And I think that's what we're trying to do in the Congress as we debate this issue, the renewal of it. And I think the courts will ultimately balance it out, too. We have to do that.
And final message, Senator, you're speaking from London to the American people, as we've just been told that our transportation system, or at least a part of it, rail transportation, bus, has been put in a higher state of alert. What would you tell Americans today about the relevance of the attacks in London to what's going on here?
They're relevant. They're relevant to what could happen in our country. Be alert. Don't despair. But we have to do that, and we will.
Alabama Senator Richard Shelby today in London. Senator, thanks very much for being here. Martha?
Thank you.
Well, the terrorist attack in London forcing major cities around the world to tighten up their own security. Right here in the U.S., the terror alert status for our train systems has now been raised to orange, which is a heightened level of awareness. Fox News national correspondent Catherine Herridge has a live report for us from our Washington newsroom. Catherine.
Yeah, we had confirmation of that about 35 minutes ago at that news conference with Secretary Chertoff. He said he was raising the threat level to orange. That's the second highest state for mass transit. So we're talking about subway systems, commuter lines, and also bus services. The Secretary said there was no intelligence indicating that something similar was planned here in the United States, but he said given the attack in London, it was only reasonable to take these extra security measures until we can get a fallout on the situation there. He spoke just a few minutes ago.
This is not an occasion for undue anxiety. It's an occasion for a sense of sympathy and solidarity for our allies over in Britain, a renewal of our determination to keep our country safe, and a measured and appropriate response in terms of dealing with what has happened overseas.
So what is this measured and appropriate response? Already this morning we've seen security increase on mass transit systems in Washington, D.C., also New York City, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Amtrak. What can you look for? What we can expect is very visible security. The feeling within Homeland Security is that this highly visible security can have a deterrent effect. So you'll see more law enforcement officers patrolling the platform. You'll see more bomb detection dogs going through the stations, checking packages, checking people. There'll be more spot checks of passengers, and they'll also put up more of those concrete barriers around some of the entrances to the sites. Now, while the secretary said they'd had no intelligence suggesting something like this was imminent or maybe planned for London, he did, and I think it's very worth noting that he did mention al-Qaeda twice. He said that al-Qaeda, they know from the intelligence, is very intent on hitting our allies. Britain is one of our allies, and also intent on hitting the United States. And he also said, in his opinion, this seemed to have some of the hallmarks of an al-Qaeda attack. We've talked a lot about this morning. It's mass transit, it's conventional explosives, and it's also a simultaneous attack. Just to wrap up, I think the bottom line for the secretary is that they feel that security here in this country, he said, we have a lot of confidence in the mass transit system. They also feel since 9/11 that security has really ramped up in many respects. He explained at the news conference they're not taking aviation, for example, and putting it on a heightened state of alert. But he also feels that they've got to have a good assessment of the intelligence streams leading up to today and going forward. And so in the short term, it's going to mean heightened security here in the United States.
Indeed.
Martha.
Catherine, thank you very much.
You're
Catherine
welcome.
Herridge.
And joining us now, Bill Gavin. He's the former assistant director in charge of the FBI here in New York City. He was responsible for the operational investigation and resolution of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Bill, good to see you. Let's start with that. I remember when that happened, my office had a picture view of the World Trade Center when that bomb went off in '93. We were laughing at how inept some of these terrorists seemed to be back then. But as the Secretary of Defense tells us, this is a thinking enemy. The mistakes they made in the past, they don't often repeat in the future. And the fact that they were able to get a cell into London, carry out coordinated attacks, shows that indeed they are learning from past mistakes.
David, you're absolutely right. The past mistakes, they look at the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Well, they did a tremendous amount of damage, $600 million and 6 lives and 100,000 people injured. What they did learn from that their approach to take down that building wasn't the right approach. They went to school. Osama bin Laden, remember, comes from a family of engineers in Saudi Arabia and has access to all kinds of construction theories and thoughts. And it's my personal opinion that they went back to school and said, what will take those down? And it was as simple as a superheating of the steel within that building, that physics will take over after that. One floor drops and the other, and it's done. Right now, they are doing things in a more concerted effort. They're doing things that are coordinated. They're doing things that are sequential. They're thinking these things out. Today in London with the bombings in the tubes, they also scheduled a bombing for outside the tubes, knowing full well that when people get out of the tubes, they want to get into public transportation and get away as rapidly as possible. So therefore, the bomb on the bus, it's despicable, it's horrendous, but they continue to do those things as long as they can.
But Bill, beyond the actual explosions and the blasts themselves, the fact that they were able to coordinate these networks of Islamic terrorists throughout the world and get this one cell, at least one cell, into London shows that there's still these cells that are operating throughout the world, perhaps here in the United States, without us knowing about them.
I think you're absolutely right, David. Those cells are all over the world in free countries. I have no doubt that there are cells that exist within the United States. We've been very successful in preventing a number of occurrences in the United States, but the attack on our rail system, the attack on our shipping system, I really believe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that's going to occur.
Well, is the FBI, we know how hamstrung you folks in the FBI were initially before 9/11 in order to coordinate your activities. Have those hamstrings been ripped off of our own intelligence agencies, both foreign and domestic?
They have been ripped off But there are certain things that we still have to look at in putting all these things back together again. Well, we have to look at the great degree of cooperation, the systems that have been put in place recently with the National Intelligence Director, things of those sort, to force people. I think there was a great degree of ability to work together, but I also believe that it could have been a lot better, and now it is going to get better. For instance, right now today, I can assure you that being in Boston, I hear the sirens and whatnot, that everybody's going to South Station to look at the increased protection of South Station. In addition,
so that's the rail station in Boston. Go ahead.
That's the rail station in Boston that handles not only the T, but also the surface transportation for commuter rails, and also Amtrak is also located there. So there's increased awareness there. The other thing that's happening, and it's so important, I heard you talk about human intelligence on this program earlier in the morning, and human intelligence is so important. When we heighten the alert, such as has been done by Judge Chertoff, what happens now is people take possession. They take pride in being involved for a change in the United States. It's always been that whole concept that I don't want to be involved, it's not my problem, I walk away. Now it's not like that. People become involved. They report what they see. They report suspicious acts. They do all those kinds of things that should be done in a free society.
Bill, what about our contacts within the Islamic community? Because we do have friends in the Islamic community. This group of Islamic terrorists who've been operating together in these networks throughout the world sometimes can be combated within the community of Muslims, correct?
They certainly can, and the big concept that there's something the matter with Islam to begin with is absolutely false, and I think the majority of people in the United States feel that. It's the extremists, the terrorists. It's one small tries to give the big group a bad name. The help that comes from the Islamic people themselves.
Okay, Bill,
so
I have to cut you off. Martha?
Sure.
All right, we have been waiting for this, and now we expect a word from Governor George Pataki, as well as some statements by Mayor of New York City, Bloomberg, and also Ray Kelly, the police commissioner. And it looks like Governor Pataki is just getting ready to make these statements. Of course, what's happened in London so fresh in the minds of the people here in New York City.
Let me thank
Let's
all
listen
of you
in.
for being with us here this afternoon.
A tragic atrocity that has cost many innocent lives. I've just attended a meeting of the government's emergency committee, received a full report from the ministers and the officials responsible.
All right, we're going to try to fix that audio. We wanted to get you that tape statement from Tony Blair as quickly as possible. We'll go back to it. Let's take you back to Governor Pataki.
Believes about our ability to choose our own destiny and not be told by others how to live our lives. The thoughts and prayers of all New Yorkers are with the families and the victims in London, and of course with all the people of Great Britain. In New York City, as you know, we have always, since September 11th, been at a heightened level of alert at level orange. And shortly before 6 o'clock this morning, we began taking extraordinary steps to raise the level of security even above that level. We have extra units from the MTA police on all the planes. You'll see the K9 units out on the subways and the trains coming into New York. The Port Authority police.
Okay, well, we're going to switch back to Tony Blair now. We think we fixed the audio. This is tape. Let's listen in.
The stoicism and resilience of the people of London responded in a way typical of them. In addition, I welcome the statement that's been put out by the Muslim Council of Great Britain. We know that these people act in the name of Islam, but we also know that the vast and overwhelming majority of Muslims here and abroad are decent and law-abiding people who abhor this act of terrorism every bit as much as we do. It is through terrorism that the people that have committed this terrible act express their values. And it's right at this moment that we demonstrate ours. We all know what they're trying to do. They're trying to use the slaughter of innocent people to cow us to frighten us out of doing the things that we want to do, of trying to stop us going about our business as normal as we're entitled to do. And they should not and they must not succeed. When they try to intimidate us, we will not be intimidated. Our country or our way of life by these methods, we will not be changed. When they try to divide our people or weaken our resolve, we will not be divided and our resolve will hold firm. We will show by our spirit and dignity and by a quiet but true strength that there is in the British people, that our values will long outlast theirs. The purpose of terrorism is just that. It is to terrorize people, and we will not be terrorized. I'd like once again to express my sympathy and my sorrow for those families who will be grieving so unexpectedly and tragically tonight. This is a very sad day for the British people, but we will hold true to the British way of life. Thank you.
Tony Blair, Prime Minister of England, who has been steadfast and sure-footed since this began, despite the tragedy. We switch now across the pond to New York, where Governor Pataki is speaking on the situation here in the States.
Security, Wayne Bennett, our superintendent, Jim Kallstrom, my special advisor for security efforts and to everyone involved, this is the greatest city in the world. We know what it's like to be attacked, but we know what it's like to live in freedom and in confidence, and that's what we have got to do. Yes, let's say a prayer for the people of London. Yes, let's understand that the war on terror is not over, but it's a war we are going to win. And we are going to win it by living as free and confident New Yorkers and Americans. So take the subway, ride the train, go to work, play in the parks. The best security in the world is there to protect you, and it will be there night and day, so long as it is necessary. Thank you, and God bless you all. Mayor?
Governor, thank you. Early this morning, as you know, the terrorists bombed the London subway and bus system. It was a despicable, cowardly act. And as the governor said, all New Yorkers and all Americans' hearts and prayers go out to the families and the victims across the ocean. Britain has been a staunch ally of America, and the British people have stood with the American people when we've needed them back on 9/11, before that and after that. And we will do everything we can to assist them in their hour of need. As the governor said this morning, everybody worked together. I think what you're seeing is the kind of cooperation and coordination that everybody needs if we are going to keep this city, this state, and this country safe. You see it at the level of the state and city. You see it at the level of all the different police departments involved. You see it at the level of the police and the other agencies that have to be ready and are part of our surveillance, our preparation, and our deterrence. This morning, as soon as the attack was learned about, the NYPD responded by implementing additional counterterrorism measures to protect New York's transit system and to secure our city. The NYPD is holding over the 1st platoon, that's the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, indefinitely to provide thousands of extra police officers for mass transit and other sensitive locations, including the British consulate. Our planned counterterrorism surges are being directed into subways. OCCB warrants and headquarters personnel have been ordered into uniform and are being deployed to secure our mass transit system. That gives us more uniformed officers and more of a visible presence. We've increased police visibility on bus and subway lines and stepped up inspections of suspicious baggage and packages. NYPD, you should know, has also increased its bridge and tunnel coverage. All subway tunnels that cross the river are being monitored 24 hours a day by the NYPD. CT inspectors are providing borough commanders with priority mass transit and other sensitive locations to cover. The NYPD is working with the MTA on any other further developments. We've also stepped up our coverage of New York's waterways. NYPD helicopters are patrolling the harbor. Sea marshals are riding our boats accompanied by bomb-sniffing canines. All Staten Island ferries are being escorted by NYPD and Coast Guard patrol boats. We've increased our police presence in the St. George and Whitehall ferry terminals. In both terminals, we have a significant number of security cameras monitoring all activity. Department of Transportation employees in our terminals and on our ferry boats are also looking out for any suspicious activity. We have increased the number of DEP police who are guarding our city's water supply. We've also increased our already robust testing system, which examines if any contaminants are in the water. The NYPD will be sending 4 additional detectives from our counterterrorism and intelligence divisions to London. On behalf of all New Yorkers, let me again express our deepest sympathies to the British people. We know all too well what London is experiencing, and we will provide any help that we can in their recovery and in bringing those responsible to justice. This attack against the people of London hits close to home because of the special bonds our cities and countries share. I know that New Yorkers are concerned that this type of attack could be replicated here in our city. But let me assure you, we are doing everything in our power to prevent that from happening. We have the best police department in the world, and it is dedicated to protecting the people of this city. So to all my fellow New Yorkers, I urge you, as did the governor, to go about your lives. We must not allow these cowardly terrorists to ruin our ways of life. Commissioner?
I just want to give you, again, a summary of what we've done so far. As the mayor said, as soon as we learned of the attacks in London this morning, we held our first platoon. Normally works midnight to 8 a.m. They were held over to provide additional police officers and added coverage specifically to the transit system and other sensitive locations, including United Kingdom offices here in New York City. The increased police protection of buses, subways, bridges, and tunnels was put in place in time for this morning's rush hour and will continue indefinitely. There will be uniformed police officers on every subway in the city during the rush hours this afternoon, this evening, and tomorrow morning. We have also increased police presence on the commuter ferries. We've increased our canine patrols in the transit system. The police department has also activated its emergency operations center at police headquarters to accommodate face-to-face coordination with the MTA, with the Port Authority, other city agencies, the Department of Transportation, as I say, other relevant agencies. The subway coverage includes train order maintenance sweeps, or TOMs as we call them, where police officers board each car of a subway train to look for suspicious activity of any kind. We have diverted all truck traffic from the Williamsburg Bridge to the Manhattan Bridge in order to facilitate concentrated inspection of large vehicles on that one span. We have an increased police presence at all other crossings into the city, into Manhattan. Police officers assigned to our Organized Crime Patrol Bureau, Warrant Squad, and Internal Affairs Bureau, and police headquarters, as the mayor said, have been ordered into uniform and deployed to mass transit locations. The police department's bomb squad has been assigned to extended 12-hour tours of duty. All subway water tunnels are receiving fixed 24-hour coverage. Police checkpoints have been established in the city's financial district and at other strategic locations. Our police harbor launches and helicopters have also been deployed as part of an intensified counterterrorism overlay, as have our heavily armed Hercules teams. A team of detectives from the Counterterrorism Bureau and the Intelligence Division, as the mayor said, was dispatched to London this morning to supplement the NYPD liaison already stationed there. Our liaison there and in other cities around the world have been supplying us with a steady flow of information to help the department shape our response in the city. NYPD's counterterrorism inspectors met early this morning with our borough commanders to identify priority mass transit and other vital locations for increased coverage in all 5 boroughs. As part of our regular counterterrorism coverage, we deploy large numbers of officers every day to various locations designated by our intelligence division. Today, however, all of our critical response surges throughout the city have been focused on the transit system. We have also deployed our COBRA teams, who are trained to deal with chemical, biological, and radioactive material. The police department is working closely with the MTA and other agencies to protect transportation hubs, bridges and tunnels, and mass transit in general. For example, the New York City Police Department has supplemented police coverage of the past stations in Manhattan. We've also sent additional officers to patrol Penn Station, the Jamaica Station, here at Grand Central Station to work with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Police. Throughout the day, the police department has used its extensive email system with private security within the city, including corporations, hospitals, and universities, to keep them apprised of all relevant information. Our intelligence division has also activated its Nexus program with industry and assigned our foreign-speaking detectives to scrutinize al-Qaeda-linked chat rooms and other terrorist-related sites to search for any threat information concerning New York. However, as the mayor said, there is no information to indicate that New York City is being targeted. The actions we are taking today are being done as a precaution. And as we did after subway bombings in Moscow and Madrid, the police department is applying all relevant information gleaned from the London attacks to better protect New York City. We ask that members of the public remain vigilant, and if you see anything that raises your suspicions, please call 311 and ask to be connected to our counterterrorism hotline. Of course, if there is anything of an immediate emergency, always call 911. Mr. Mayor?
Ladies and gentlemen,
all right, those are the various New Yorkers involved in securing the city of New York. We had the mayor of the city of New York. We had Police Commissioner Ray Kelly and, of course, the governor of the state of New York as well to talk about efforts that are now being made to secure New York in light of what happened in London. Of course, the terror attacks in London, the big news today. Martha?
And that also followed some very expressive statements by Tony Blair saying that they, meaning the terrorists, express their values and we express ours. These bombings taking a huge toll, of course, on people's emotions as we look at the very close relationship between London and between our own country, the long partnership that exists. And as I said, these London bombings taking a big toll on emotions. Fox News business correspondent Dagan McDowell is here with a look at the market reaction to these terror attacks, and at least here seems to be stabilizing a bit. Dagan.
Absolutely, Martha. Those deadly terror attacks in London shaking stocks both here and abroad, but the market's showing some surprising strength. And by early afternoon, the Dow is well off its lows for the day. It was down about 95 points when it first opened. Now it's only down 15 points. The Nasdaq lower by 2. The Nasdaq was actually up a short while ago. The S&P falling about 2.5. Now, the worry over today's bombings and renewed terror fears would be that it would damage confidence confidence among consumers and businesses and hurt the global economy. Now, markets in the UK and Europe closing well in the red, but well off their lows of the day. When the news first broke of the explosions early this morning, stocks overseas went into a slide. The major market index in London dropping about 4% at one point, but ending the day down less than 1.5%. Here in the States, there are jitters, but clearly no panic on Wall Street. However, you are seeing a flight to safety in the markets, out of stocks and into government bonds, even gold. Those investments tend to hold up better in times of trouble and uncertainty. Today, insurance stocks dropping and travel-related names in particular hardest hit after the attacks. The concern there is that terror fears will keep people at home and off the roads and out of the skies. Airline stocks, for example, diving nearly 2%. Hotel shares like Hilton also dropping more than the broad market. And the cost of crude also sliding after hitting a new record in early trading. Oil's down back below $60 a barrel. Crude falling on fears that fuel demand could drop in the wake of the London attacks. But oil watchers are also keeping a close eye on Hurricane Dennis, worried that the storm could whack supplies coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. But overall, the markets might be down slightly, but certainly not out, and showing surprising strength. David, back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Dagan. Well, the bombings in London reminding Americans to be on the alert. Transportation systems all over the country beefed up, our security systems included, and our subways and buses have been risen. The terror alert level has been risen to orange because of what the Homeland Security Department says might be a concern in light of what's happened in London. Joining us now to talk about this, Democratic Congressman Bill Pascrell, a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, and Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. We want to talk about the U.S., but first we want to talk about London. Bill Pascrell, first to you. You know, I remember the Japanese worrying after Pearl Harbor that they woke up a lion, which is in fact what happened when they started World War II. Has the same thing happened in London now? The British public been energized to fight terrorism even more than before in light of these bombings?
Well, I'm sure they were energized. This is only going to move the ball even further down the field. We are in unison with our allies in England. We want them to know that we deeply, deeply pray for the victims and their families, and we are here to help. There's no question about it. And at the same time, we are reviewing basically what we're doing to protect our transportation system. And Secretary Chertoff was right on target when he spoke to the nation just about an hour ago, when he said that we're raising the alert level on mass transportation throughout the United States. I support that, and it helps us focus as to what we haven't done and what we should be doing in the area of protecting our mass transportation system.
Marsha Blackburn, that's a Democrat talking. You're a Republican. So far, no cause for any partisan bickering in these matters.
Well, when we're talking about the nation's safety and American safety and the safety of our men and women in uniform that are deployed around this globe, it is not a partisan issue. And this is something that my colleague and I both are very concerned about. He is an active member of the Homeland Security Committee. He has been involved in this issue. I have Fort Campbell located in my congressional district. We have individuals that are deployed, and we're very concerned about our nation's security and the security for our men and women.
Now, Bill Pascrell, we've talked about trains. They're put on a higher state of alert, orange level. We talked about buses as well, subways. We haven't talked about ports. Should that also be included in this higher alert level?
Yeah, it is. And I think that the ports are very important here, David. You are absolutely correct. We have been trying over the past few years to get the cooperation of other countries so that when goods come into this country, they've already been checked in foreign nations. We can't check every container that comes into this country. We would have commerce backed up across the oceans. But right now, our immediate concern are the buses and the mass transit system in trying to, in fact, in this year's budget, we've increased the funding, which is very, very important. The Congress has done that. When you compare it to how many dollars we've spent and are spending with our airlines, this is minuscule. You can't do this on the cheap. We are increasing the number of folks who will be on those trains, the number of canine units helping out local communities. And if I was in New York, I'd be very confident in Commissioner Ray Kelly's done an outstanding job, and his counterterrorism organization has done a fantastic job. I've worked with them along with Peter King of Long Island. We should rest assured that doesn't mean we will lower our guard in any manner, shape, or form. But
right.
You have something here to be very proud of.
And it's not just New York. We should mention Chicago's on an alert status. So is San Francisco. So from coast to coast. Marcia Blackburn, final question to you. Obviously, a terror cell or several terror cells were operating under the radar in London, England, to get this coordinated attack at work. Could the same thing happen here? Could these terror cells be operating in the U.S. below our radar?
Of course, David, and that's one of the things that concerns us. We do know that this is a war where every man and woman is on the front line, and this is something that does span our country. These terrorist cells are around there. It is why everyone has to be vigilant. As Mayor Bloomberg was saying, it is a call to vigilance. It's why Homeland Security funds and getting those funds out to our communities where they can respond, why that is important. Everyone is on the front line. We do have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful and certainly do everything we can, which is one of the things our military intelligence and our intelligence community is working on, to be certain that we break these cells apart. That is why we have to have our men and women working day and night on the issue, and they're doing a great job. And I was noting that Mayor Bloomberg was mentioning sending some of the folks from New York City to work with London to share the information that we have to help sort these out.
We have experience to share with them. Congresswoman Marcia Blackburn from Tennessee, Congressman Bill Pascrell from New Jersey. Thanks to both of you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Martha?
All right, and joining us now, retired New York Police Department Operations Commander Frank O'Hare. He worked closely with the MTA on security issues. Good to have you with us, sir. I know that you just listened to Ray Kelly, the commissioner, outlining everything that New York City is doing right now to beef up its own security. This is clearly a wake-up call to cities across the nation. What do you think about these increased efforts in light of the London bombings?
Well, the increased efforts are necessary. They're needed. What had happened in this country, we became complacent again. After 9/11, they thought it wouldn't happen again. What we have to do is reinvigorate ourselves. With the London bombings that they had, especially in transportation, we have to realize that we are going to be attacked again. When, I can't tell you, but we're going to be attacked again.
You know, there's going to be a lot of sort of looking back at this situation and saying, is there something that we should be doing differently in our subway systems, in our train systems? We now have a heightened state of alert here. Anything that you think should be done in terms of thinking outside the box of how we look at specifically train and underground security?
Well, security does not just begin with police. What we have to look at is an eyes and ears program for the public, for them to be alert to it. And you've heard that on TV before. But also what we have to look is what we have available to us. You hear a lot about CCTV, closed-circuit television, and motion detectors, intrusion detection alarms. We really have to take the personnel that we would put at bridges and tunnels and replace them with these devices so that they would become alert to the fact of when something happens. Personnel are good, but we are limiting the amount of personnel that we have available to do normal patrol, to look for these suspicious items, to be aware of what's going on in the surroundings around them.
We're hearing that London has an extremely extensive closed-circuit television operation that goes on in the underground system. How much do you think that will help in sort of tracing the events that led to this, and what might be helpful about that part of this process?
Well, the way CCTV is set up now, it's mainly for investigations afterwards. What they can do is go to the files, look at the videos, and go back and see when these devices were planted, if they can see it, due to the fact that it happened on trains during rush hour. What we have to look at is what is the similarity with that and other events that have taken place in the world. And we look at Madrid, we look at the Paris bombings, we look at 9/11. They all may have used different vehicles, may be different groups that are doing it, but the similarity is there between them.
All right, retired NYPD Frank O'Hare, thank you very much.
So just putting a short wrap on the situation. Earlier today, it was rush hour in London this morning. Terror blasts, 4 of them in total, 3 underground, 1 above ground, killing at least 33. That was just in the undergrounds. More were killed. terrorist bombing. It's affected us here in the United States. We are on a higher alert, particularly for our rail and bus systems here in the United States. The story will pick up right after a short break with our own Shepard Smith.